Up in front of me here in the studios, I have CNBC, I have MSNBC, Fox News, and CNN always on a monitor up in a corner here. And it just gives me an opportunity to look up and see what everybody's covering. And CNN, for like the 8th time in the last 2 hours, the 8th time, 6th time, easy, they're talking about the starvation, the worst case scenario of famine in Gaza. The worst case scenario of famine? I don't know. I've seen Ethiopia back in the day. I mean, that looked like famine. And what was interesting was mom and dad were both starving along with the babies. Why is it we're not seeing starving adults? We're only seeing starving babies. Why is that? Have you seen the pictures of mom or dad holding the babies that are supposedly starving and they seem perfectly healthy? Does that seem reasonable to you? There's no critical thinking here at all. None.
No, it's just, it does seem to just default believe the worst about Jews. That really does seem to be the foundation of the coverage on this stuff.
And I want you to know, I am sure there's hunger there. Real hunger.
It's bad, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, how are you getting food? There's no grocery stores. There's nothing. And you have a regime that has shot people who are trying to get food. You know, food arrives and, you know, then it goes to Hamas and they divvy the food out. So you better be loyal to Hamas. I'm sure all of that stuff is happening. So I'm not dismissing that there's not real hunger there. And we should do everything that we can. But, you know, let's put some of the onus on Hamas as well. Yeah. And then can we stop listening to the people of Hamas tell us by showing these babies who now we know have problems from birth?
When you say we should do everything we can, would you include in that perhaps Hamas releasing the hostages that they're holding?
Yes, I would. Yeah, I would.
Would that be something that they could do?
Yeah, I would.
When you talk about everything you can to solve a hunger crisis? Because that's the reason why it exists. When you murder, 1,200 people, whatever the number finally was, and you commit mass rape and assault and everything else that they did, a war breaks out. I think it was Dave Marcus who initially made this point, right after October 7th that I remember. But can you imagine what the United States of America would do if that occurred on our territory? Can you imagine the hell we would rain down on whoever did that?
If it was Canada, they'd be glass. We would turn the dirt and the sand into glass. Immediately, you're raping our children with glee and calling home to say, "Hey, mom, hey, dad, look what I'm doing." We wouldn't tolerate it for a second.
There would be nothing left of the society. They would pray to be in the position that Gaza's in if they did that to us.
And then you look at this child. The most famous picture coming out is a mother holding her son, and he's malnutrition. That's what they say. Well, according to reporting now, Mohammed, the kid, has several serious genetic disorders and has also been diagnosed with cerebral palsy. The widely shared image is also cropped in a way that removes his younger, healthier-looking brother from the frame. What? When do we stop? When do we stop? He has needed specialist medical supplements since birth, indicating that he's also likely suffered further due to the limited aid flow into Gaza, and that medical equipment is in short supply and the health system has all but collapsed. Okay, there's a story for you. He's had this genetic disorder, and now he needs special things, and he's having a hard time. But not starvation, not genocide.
There doesn't even seem to be an attempt to explain this. I mean, we all are aware of how food works, right? Like, you eat food on a daily basis, if you happen to work on this program, maybe 10, 12 times a day. And you gives you sustenance for a period of time. That period of time is not long enough to sustain you if a invading army is keeping you away for food for 2 years, right? So either there has been a massive change in tactics over the last week and a half or 2 weeks. Right now, famine is obviously, by the way, this is not an official famine. That's just a word they're throwing around to describe hunger.
It could be hunger. It could even be starvation, but famine is very different.
Very specific. I think there's been 4 famines over the past 20 years around the world. Yeah. And they're very specific.
And many times caused by communists.
Certainly throughout history, that has been basically the main cause of famine. But when you're talking about, basically what they're describing is there's been, I think, 120. Now, Ken, this is the Gaza Health Ministry, which I hesitate to even say what they're reporting, because there is no reason to believe anything the Gaza Health Ministry ever says. But their claim, which you'd assume is the most inflated possible, is 122 people have died of starvation in Gaza since the beginning of the war. Now, is that famine? Obviously not. If it's true, it's really tragic. Anyone who, unless it's one of the Hamas, murderers who's dying of starvation, then I'm not all that broken up about it, frankly. But you're talking about children dying of, that's horrible. Now, this is happening around the world at much higher numbers, right? In other areas of the world that we just don't care about at all.
More than 100 people?
Yeah. Check in on North Korea, see how that's working. Check in on certain areas of Africa. How's that working out? Many areas in Asia are having troubles with this. It's not famine, but people do die of starvation and hunger around the world, and it's terrible, and we don't want it to happen. Now, most people committing genocide don't typically work to bring in aid. I would say almost like you shouldn't depend on people trying to commit genocide to supply any food. It's typically not what they do. Again, look at Stalin. That one of the ways he committed genocide was making sure that they could not have access to food during the Holodomor. But if you look at this type of situation, unless you can describe a specific way that they're limiting food recently, right, in a different way that they decided, after October 7th, they were just really nice supplying food for 10 months, and then 3 weeks ago decided not to provide food. You can come up with some justification there that does not seem to exist, by the way. There does not seem to be a pathway to explain why all these people would survive this entire time and then suddenly start starving. And by the way, the examples we know of are people like the ones you're talking about that are supposedly starving while they're in Italy receiving treatment for rare diseases they have or ailments that they have that make them look terrible on television, while they crop out siblings that are fine, while they crop out parents that are fine. Why would that be? How did they get to Italy? Well, they got to Italy because Israel allowed them to go to Italy and helped evacuate them to Italy for treatment for the ailment that we're talking about. Now, that might not be the case with all these people. It might not be. I'm not saying that every single instance here. There is real tragedy happening in Gaza. And that is, of course, the doing of Hamas.
Well,
who's responsible for it?
I will tell you that if you're going to try to rope in and say this is not a coincidence that this famine is now at the front page while the UN is meeting to do a 2-state solution. If you're trying to say those two things are connected at all,
it's a real stretch, Glenn.
It's a real stretch.
Real stretch. And it's just it's eaten up immediately. It's just the same way every time a hospital was supposedly hit by Israel. We find out later it wasn't.
And what's weird is the same people who are doing this never cover it. I mean, they were the ones that buried the Holocaust. They never wanted to talk about any of the programs. They never wanted to. They literally covered up the Holodomor in Ukraine, which was the starving of 7 million people in 12 months. 7 million people in 12 months. And it didn't matter as long as you were Ukrainian. The Soviets wanted you dead. And the New York Times went and covered it up. They said it wasn't happening. And it's amazing that the only ones they ever really want to cover seem to be, and, when it comes to CNN, that's Christiane Amanpour. She is the head of their, or at least used to be, I'm sure, if she's not her, it's massive all of her people. She's massive influence on all the coverage coming out of the Middle East, and she does not like Israel. That's why you're seeing this coverage. I mean, it is
quite the understatement there.
Yeah.
She does not like it.
Yeah, it is. It's remarkable to me how you can know that these pictures, and I've seen that picture on CNN several times today.
Oh, they've been running it like crazy.
Yeah.
After everyone knows.
How are you still running that? Look
at the New York Times picture we just had up here. If you're watching Blaze TV, it is looking like a very starved infant in the hands of an adult.
Yeah,
it does not seem all that starved.
No, that's the picture where they cut out the healthy looking kid, the healthy looking sibling too. That's the picture.
I mean,
look at that one. If that's true, if this one from the Daily Express, if that child is literally starving, why don't you see the parent's face too? Because the parent should look like that baby, maybe even worse.
Right, worse.
You would feed your child before you would feed yourself. Why are the adults cropped out of these pictures? And if that picture is true, then we need to know it.
Right. I saw some, I've seen a few of these, but like social media influencer types, that this stuff is now reaching people that don't, deal with the news. And they're like, I've been told not to talk about this, but can't we just all agree that babies should not be starved? Can't we just agree that? It's like, yeah, we can definitely all agree that babies should be starved. We can't apparently agree that they shouldn't be murdered in the womb. That's something we can't agree on, but we should all agree that they should not be starved. I agree with that. But do you think that there's any sort of responsibility on your part to know word one about the truth about the story? Like, is there any responsibility on your part to, look into it for 10 seconds?
No,
apparently not.
Children are starving somewhere, Stu.
Yeah, and you don't care about any of the other ones.
Yeah.
You don't care about any of the other ones. You don't care about any of them that are aborted. You don't care about any of them that starve anywhere else. You care only about this one situation. And when that accusation comes up, and it does often, and sometimes unfairly, sometimes, anti-Semitism charges are thrown around wildly for people who are just being critical of, Netanyahu's policies. That does occur. But when you come to this summary and you're like, oh, gosh, you don't care about starvation anywhere else. You don't care about any of these things anywhere else. Just this one instance, the only thing that just eats up all of your passions. Why is that? And I don't think it's completely insane to at least suspect potential anti-Semitism from the Rashida Tlaibs, the AOCs, the Mamdanis, the Ilhan Omars of the world.
From those people, absolutely, I agree with you. But from the average person, no, they're a symptom of what I talked about yesterday, that Bonhoeffer talked about. Stupidity. They have just signed over their intellectual curiosity, their responsibility to think things through. They've just signed it over to an ideology. They've signed it over to other people. No, it says that. I know I have to be on that side. That's what it is. And they absolutely believe it. Because they're stupid. And I don't mean, you could be very, very smart and stupid at the same time.
Yeah.
You've just signed over all of your curiosity to an ideology. And you have a responsibility to wake up. All right, back in just a second.